Hello everybody and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. For those of you who have not seen these videos before, my name is Andrew Knight and I've been working for RICS for over 12 years now. I work within the knowledge and practice part of the organisation, and my role is to look at the effect of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. And with over 110,000 members working worldwide, right across the property life cycle through land, planning and development, construction, finance, valuation, brokerage, building and asset management, and indeed end of life, and also working across all the major asset types, whether that's land itself, rural, residential, infrastructure, commercial, alternative assets. Obviously a hugely broad canvas upon which data and technology is having a profound and valuable effect. And today I'm really happy to have Jean-Michel Paul joining me. So welcome on the call, Jean-Michel.
Thanks, Andrew.
Well, I always like, before we get into the bits and bytes, to get a bit of the kind of human element. So it'd be great to hear a bit about your backstory, Jean-Michel, and indeed the origin story of real estate analytics.
Okay. Well, despite my strong French accent, I happen to be Belgium, so I guess that's what it is what it is. So, and real analytics really started somewhere 20-something years ago when I was doing my PhD in UC Berkeley. Somewhat by mistake, I was registered both for a PhD in real estate and finance. And so I happened to do both. But the difference between the two worlds was really striking, because in finance, everything was quantified to the extreme. And with one Bloomberg, you could have access to anything. While, you know, on the real estate side, while Berkeley was the #1 department in the country and had a huge grant of 20 million something for the library, you had all these stacks of books, all these stories, and you could not do much with it. Okay. And hence the idea of real estate analytics. And after a career in investment banking and a hedge fund, 3.5 years ago, I looked back and realized it was still the same. So I thought, this is what I want to do.
And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is around the kind of application of AI, and obviously it's an incredibly hot topic, you know, especially now with all these large language models and all the hype and discussion of ChatGPT. But I'm interested particularly initially to talk about the difference between the kind of use of AI in the commercial real estate world as opposed to that in residential real estate, because obviously, as you know, those asset classes themselves are very different in many ways. And so what are you seeing in the difference in the way AI is being used in those two classes?
Well, AI can be used in many ways, and it all starts with big data. There is a lot more data on commercial, which is a much more professional world, than on the residential, which has a lot more domestic regulations and a very different sets of investors, starting with homeowners, obviously. But that's the background. But from a technical point of view, AI is first about data extraction. Okay, so getting data out of pictures, getting data out of data, inferring data. And there it brings a lot new world to the residential, because the residential didn't have that data before. Okay? So that's a very first difference. Then as for the users of it, while the analyticals can be and certainly should be enhanced by both, again, residential was a bit of a backstory, even if it's much bigger in total asset size, multiple bigger. Again, the users in the residential were not as sophisticated, to be frank. Okay, so the AI can bridge that gap and bring both to a higher level, but the jump that is being performed is really much higher for residential.
As you say, I mean, I know in the UK, the residential asset class is probably worth 6 times as much as the commercial one in terms of the kind of asset value. I mean, thinking about that residential real estate industry and all the different participants in that cycle and that sector, who do you think that the real beneficiaries will be, and what value will they get from using AI?
Okay, so since World War II, the productivity in construction and real estate has actually not changed. It means, and actually, if we were to believe McKinsey, which I believe is a good source, since 1990, it has decreased. And it's the only industry where productivity has decreased. Okay. So there's tremendous pockets of productivity in the related industry at large. And that's a result of underspending. If you look at finance, finance is about $200 trillion assets worldwide, while real estate is 350 trillion. Now, finance spends $500 billion a year in data and IT. Real estate spends $10 billion. So while the asset class is nearly twice as big, it spends only 2% of the amounts from by finance. That means that it's very good and bad news. The bad news is for startups like us. There is really very little budget when we talk to our counterparts, whether it be them agents or developers or banks or investment funds in real estate, because they are not used to spend anything. Now, the great news, and maybe the most important news, is that there's tremendous productivity for every single type of players in real estate. And we can go through the agents, which can have access to real-time transactions, automatic negotiations, automatic pricings, automatic rendering. The developer, what is the best thing to build? What should it be priced at? What is the best site to make? All this can be resolved automatically by AI. For the lending entities, what about an automatic rating of the loans, something that does not exist? And for the investors, well, what is the best plot of land to buy? Okay, all of these are questions that AI can answer, or at least a little bit like a GPS, give the human expert some shortcuts to information to make the journey faster and safer.
Well, you've identified really well some key issues there, I think, where AI can help the real estate industry in that residential sector. I mean, who are the key players driving this kind of AI revolution in addition to yourselves? Who are the people who are kind of at the forefront of applying and developing this technology? Okay,
so I don't think there has been a leader emerging worldwide on AI in real estate yet. There are in architectural companies like Archistar in Australia who have done a really good job in using computer and AI in designing buildings, if you want. There's been a couple of players looking at the value of buildings that don't even exist. But it hasn't merged into, I would say, compelling solutions where the value is clear. So it's been a little bit like the metaverse with Facebook. It's a very interesting thing, and you don't mind playing with it, but you really wonder why you should buy a piece of real estate in metaverse, right? So this is a bit where we are, and it's a bit like a tipping point because the data is being gathered, and I can tell you that we've been doing sandbox exercise with developers, and we can demonstrate for real that sales can go up by 10% using AI, right? So it is at this point where personal computer stops being a hobby and starts being, something that is going to bring value to everybody.
I mean, you talked about an example there, Jean-Michel, around an increase in sales there that is hopefully a direct causation of using this kind of technology. What kind of motivation do you think the market will have for using AI? Because although it's a little bit, I think, of a cliche, it is a conservative sector. As you said yourself, in relative terms, the amount of money in terms of R&D, data and tech is very small compared to other sectors, and that's led that stagnation of productivity in many ways. What do you think will overcome these kind of almost behavioral barriers to using AI and other technology? What will really drive change in the sector?
Yeah, so behavioral is really a key word there. I think you're totally right. We are used to do things in a certain way, and it's difficult to adapt. But that's where there will be new entrants. If developers don't adapt and take the AI, then there'll be private equity fund coming and directly funding new development based on that. And they will outbid developers on land sales because they will have much higher profit margin. If a developer average return is 5 or 6% and the private equity fund can get 15%, it will win. It will win in the land bid, and it will. So, competition, the old ways of capitalistic world, which is creative destruction. We are bringing creation. Creation will bring some destruction, but overall be much better off. And that's really the dynamic that will start entering the sector. It may come, and I'm speculating here, maybe from the lending entities, because if we can say that the development should be done in a better way, then it doesn't take much to flip the coin, so to speak, and to say this is probably not a good development to lend to, or this is an excellent development to lend to. And since finance has been more adept at adapting AI, this may be one of the ways it will enter the market. That's possible.
So you're a believer in Schumpeter's view of creative destruction, then, that there will be this sort of driver that external forces or other behavioural changes will make the sector change, perhaps whether it likes it or not.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that every single financial crisis has always had a real estate element into it, right? And 2008 we had it. In the 70s we had it, and we're probably going to have one now with rising interest rates, right? So every time we have this huge component there. But what if, with AI, like, government produce indices on, maybe every 3 months, if we lucky, right? And with a few weeks delay, and these indices tends to be very, massaged. Let's put it this way. Okay. Now with the big data, we do produce actually indices on a daily basis, and it's not just for the country, it's for the city. It's not the city, it's this neighborhood, it's this street, it's this project. We can produce daily index. So you can see, like, one of the applications that will happen is that you will start being able to hedge. Developers will be able to hedge. Banks will be able to hedge their real estate exposure. But as a society, will be of tremendous value, because it will allow to reduce risk in real estate, making it cheaper and making all the cyclical elements of major financial crisis not affecting the real estate sector, right? It is not because real estate price goes down that a developer should go bankrupt. If a developer did a good job and spread a good part of the market, did a good building, did a good sale, each will make a profit, and it will hedge its real estate risk, just like airline companies hedge, fuel costs, right? For the next flight, they will have to adjust, but for this flight, it will be fine, and for this development, it will be fine, and that will be of tremendous value, right? It will reduce the cost for everybody, and this is just one application, and yet with major impact right away. So it's hard to underestimate the impact that big data and AI will have on such a major sector as real estate.
As you say, I mean, it paints a picture there, really, Jean-Michel, of making real estate an asset class that, as you say, has all those financial instruments like credit default swaps and hedging to give it the same kind of stability that we expect, hopefully, from the bond market and from securities and shares, stocks and shares in that way.
Yeah, you see, we call this AI. I don't like the word AI very much, to be honest, just because it's okay. It's just statistics applied to a lot of data. But if you go back in time and you look at finance in the 80s, right, it was about the same. You were buying a stock, it was a story, right, and you will buy it and you will pay 2% to your broker. Now, if I go and buy a stock, I don't pay anything to my broker, right? And actually, it's being traded on a quantitative basis by funds behind arbitrage to hell. Okay, and all this is so much more efficient today, and I can go on my mobile app and do anything. Now, what is happening, and that this quantification process is happening to real estate, which is the most important asset of all. Okay, it's been very difficult to do because data is much easier to grasp for a company than for a unit or for an apartment. But it is happening. We have system live now that goes into an apartment and automatically describes it and prepares a listing in any language you want. And all these attributes are stored and produce automatic valuation. and the automatic valuation project, and all that creates indices real time. But was honestly, when I started real estate analytics, we were 3 people. We're getting close to 100 today. We did not know if this was possible, and now we're doing it, and that's in 3 years.
So thinking about what you're doing at Real Estate Analytics, what are the kind of primary sort of tech and procedural challenges that you're facing, and hopefully how you're addressing and overcoming them?
I think the most difficult thing is actually not technical, because well, you need massive computing power, you do need massive data and smart algorithms and all that, but all that other industries have resolved it, and it's really a question of bringing it to our industry. The biggest challenge of all is, what do I do with all this data? It's like you have all this fuel. What is the engine? And once you have the engine, what am I going to do with power for? Right? So there's the fuel, there's the data, there is the engine, there's the AI statistical methods, and you have all this. And now that we have all this power, what are we going to do with it? That's the main challenge.
Fascinating. And what do you see from a kind of a regional perspective? What do you see as the kind of major differences in the way AI is being applied? Because obviously, you know, with this tech partner program, we're talking to people all around the world, and it's always fascinating to hear about different rates of adoption, different barriers that different regions are finding. So, what's your view of how AI is being applied in the different regions that you're working in?
Okay. Well, when I look all around the world, I think AI in real estate is basically not used. It is not used. Okay. When we try to design system and test, well, from the start, we design all the algorithms to be location agnostic, right? So as long as there is the data, it works. We very recently deployed it to Hong Kong from Singapore, and it worked like a charm, actually even better than in Singapore, without making changes. So it was fantastic. But when you go, like we deploy in Australia, that's easy. But when you go to Malaysia, a bit more challenging because the data is not quite there. And we try Indonesia, and then it was a bit complicated. Okay, so there are places where we use satellite processing, satellite images processing, to validate if the building actually exists as it is in the register. Right? For instance. And sometimes there are buildings that are not in the register. So you have to recreate, everything in some sense. Okay. So not every place is as organized as London would be, where you have a very neat knowledge of things from the data, and it's a matter of digitalizing the data. There are places where the records are just not correct. Okay. So, and then you have to add layers to recreate a master record.
No, I suppose that's a really key point, isn't it? That it's almost the biggest differences are just the availability and the quality of data you have in a certain jurisdiction, and how that then drives the need to replace that with proxies, or as you say, other sources to validate in that way.
Indeed, and so we have many different sources of data, and I would like to call it a data lake rather than data. And maybe for viewers, just to summarize the difference, is very simple. Data lake includes images, right? So we process a lot of images because as this is a real asset by definition, okay, there's nothing like a good picture of it. And if you have a good picture of it, you can say so many things, right? You can say it's so many floors. It's it probably has an inside capacity of so much, and it's well maintained. It's not. We process all this image, and just externally we can tell you the age of the building, the style of the building, the use of the building, and a very good estimate of the area, right? And once you get into it and you get the picture inside, it gets to a whole different level. So it's data lake, and it's massive. Okay, but it all converge, and you have to create a data structure that is very robust, as there will be contradictory information, and there will only be one proof because it's real.
Well, it's been fascinating, and I guess my final question is perhaps the most challenging one as ever. Whenever I ask this kind of question, is what do you see as the future of AI in the residential real estate industry, and how do you see it evolving over the next 3, 4, 5 years?
So if we look what AI has done in other industry, right? It released pockets of productivity. It probably means fewer people doing much more, okay? As well as new products with new people, new function that we don't really know. So for instance, we recently, we created a digital twin of Singapore where you can go and visit, right? And we just thought we could put furniture in it, and now people sell furniture using this, right? And so yeah, we don't know how it's going to be, and that's the beauty of it. Every day we come in the office, every day I come, I feel like a little boy in a toy shop, because there are amazing ideas from these young people looking at it, and why it makes people on the job today more productive, and thus will reduce the number and the price of things. It will also create all kinds of new services that we are just starting to understand.
Well, fascinating, and I think there's a real note of optimism there that, as ever, new technology is not necessarily there to destroy, but simply to augment what we already do and create new roles and create new opportunities. So, well, for today, Jean-Michel, thanks ever so much for your time, and I look forward to catching up again. But thanks for a really illuminating conversation.
Thanks, Andrew.